Many people think marriage is supposed to feel overwhelming, dramatic, and exhausting. They assume stress is normal and peace is unrealistic. But the truth is, a marriage written by Allah does not drain your soul, it strengthens it. The right marriage does not feel like emotional survival, it feels like worship. This is why some relationships consume your energy while others increase your iman. One pulls you away from yourself and from Allah. The other brings you back. When a marriage is from Allah, it does not require you to abandon your faith to keep the connection alive. It helps you live your faith more fully. If you have ever wondered why some unions feel heavy from the start, while others feel calm even in difficulty, this message is for you. Because the right marriage does not just change your life, it changes how close you feel to Allah. The right marriage does not keep your heart in a constant state of alert. You are not always wondering what mood awaits you, what mistake you might make, or what emotional shift is coming next. Instead, there is a baseline of calm that settles into your life. Even on difficult days, your nervous system is not under attack. Your heart feels safe enough to rest. In a marriage written by Allah, peace is not something you have to earn by walking on eggshells. You do not carefully measure every word out of fear of reaction. You can speak honestly without anxiety, because respect exists beneath the conversation. That safety changes how you carry yourself inside the relationship. Constant tension drains iman quietly. It keeps the heart busy with survival instead of remembrance. The right marriage removes that pressure. It creates emotional space where you can think clearly, worship sincerely, and live without constant internal stress. Calm does not mean silence or lack of emotion. It means stability. It means that even when emotions rise, they do not spiral into chaos. Disagreements may happen, but they do not threaten the foundation of the relationship. You are not afraid that one argument will undo everything. In the right marriage, your body responds differently. You breathe easier. You sleep better. Your thoughts are not consumed by worry. This physical calm is not separate from spirituality. A heart that is not constantly tense is more present with Allah. There is a difference between passion and pressure. Pressure makes love feel heavy. Passion rooted in calm makes love feel safe. The right marriage does not rely on emotional highs and lows to feel alive. It is alive because it is grounded. When calm exists, you are not addicted to reassurance. You do not need constant validation to feel secure. Trust replaces anxiety. That trust allows affection to flow naturally instead of being demanded. In a peaceful marriage, you are not bracing yourself emotionally. You are not preparing defenses before conversations. You enter interactions openly, knowing that misunderstanding will be handled with care, not punishment. The right marriage does not activate your fears, it soothes them. Old wounds do not get triggered repeatedly. Instead, they slowly heal because the environment is safe enough for healing to occur. Tension often comes from unpredictability. In a marriage with Barakah, consistency exists. You know how your spouse treats you during stress, disappointment, and conflict. That predictability builds calm. Calm also comes from fairness. You are not constantly proving your worth or justifying your needs. Your feelings are taken seriously without becoming weapons later. This fairness removes the inner strain many people normalize. In the right marriage, silence does not feel threatening. Quiet moments are not filled with overthinking. They are comfortable. You do not assume distance means danger. That alone is a sign of emotional health. When calm is present, your focus expands beyond the relationship. You can think about growth, purpose, and worship. You are not consumed by emotional maintenance. The relationship supports your life instead of becoming your life. The right marriage allows you to relax into your role. You are not performing love, you are living it. There is no constant effort to hold things together because they are not always falling apart. Calm is also reflected in how problems are approached. Issues are addressed, not avoided or exploded. There is patience in problem solving, not urgency fueled by fear. A marriage with inner calm does not make you question your reality. You are not confused by mixed signals. Clarity exists. Even when answers are difficult, honesty is present. When your heart is calm, you are more receptive to Allah. Stress hardens the heart. Peace softens it. A peaceful marriage becomes an environment where iman can grow. The right marriage does not exhaust you emotionally. You may feel challenged, but not depleted. Effort does not feel like survival. It feels like building something meaningful. Calm allows gratitude to exist. When tension dominates, gratitude disappears. In a peaceful marriage, appreciation flows more easily because your heart is not constantly defending itself. You begin to realize that love was never meant to feel like anxiety, that anxiety was a signal, not a standard. The right marriage corrects that misunderstanding. This is how you recognize a marriage written by Allah. Your heart is not constantly tense. It is steady, and in that steadiness, you find peace that feels closer to worship than struggle. The right marriage does not require effort to keep Allah in the center. It happens naturally. You do not feel pulled away from prayer, remembrance, or spiritual discipline to maintain closeness with your spouse. Instead, your faith quietly becomes part of daily life together, woven into routines without force. In a marriage from Allah, worship does not feel like competition. You are not choosing between your spouse and your salah. Both exist without conflict. When prayer time comes, it is respected. When you need spiritual space, it is honored. This respect removes guilt from worship. The right marriage does not distract your heart from Allah. It refines it. Love becomes a reminder of Allah's mercy rather than a replacement for it. You find yourself remembering Allah more often, not because you are instructed to, but because your environment supports awareness. When faith feels natural in marriage, it is because your spouse values it genuinely. They do not treat religion as a phase, a mood, or a tool. They see it as a foundation. That shared understanding allows iman to grow without pressure. In the right marriage, spiritual growth is encouraged without comparison. You are not measured, ranked, or judged. Progress is personal. This removes fear and allows sincerity to flourish. Worship becomes something you return to willingly. Your spouse does not make you feel excessive for caring about your deen. They do not downplay your caution or sensitivity. Instead, they respect it. That respect affirms that faith is not an inconvenience, but a priority. A marriage that draws you closer to Allah does not glamorize negligence. It does not normalize missing obligations or delaying worship unnecessarily. At the same time, it does not shame you when you struggle. Balance is present. In such a marriage, reminders of Allah feel gentle, not heavy. Advice is offered with wisdom, not authority. Correction comes from care, not superiority. This tone keeps hearts open rather than defensive. The right marriage makes spiritual consistency easier. You find yourself maintaining habits that once required effort. This is not because you have changed suddenly, but because your surroundings no longer pull you away. Your spouse does not mock or minimize your fear of Allah. They understand that this fear is not weakness. It is guidance. That understanding strengthens your confidence in your values. In a marriage from Allah, you do not feel the need to hide your spiritual side. You do not compartmentalize faith and love. They coexist without contradiction. This integration brings inner peace. When difficulties arise, you turn to Allah together. Duas are not a last resort. They are a first response. This shared reliance builds unity beyond emotional attachment. The right marriage does not make you forget the akhirah. It reminds you of it. Decisions are weighed with accountability in mind. This awareness influences choices quietly but deeply. You begin to see marriage itself as ibadah. Patience becomes worship. Kindness becomes worship. Responsibility becomes worship. This perspective changes how you experience daily interactions. Faith grows strongest when it is lived, not debated. In the right marriage, Islam is practiced through conduct, not arguments. This lived example shapes the heart more than words. You notice that your heart feels cleaner, guilt decreases, clarity increases. This is the result of living in alignment rather than conflict. A marriage that brings you closer to Allah does not demand perfection. It supports effort. It values intention. That balance prevents burnout and despair. You stop feeling torn between dunya and deen. The two begin to align. Worldly responsibilities feel purposeful because they are connected to a higher goal. Over time, you realize that your love has not distracted you from Allah. It has reminded you of Him. That realization brings gratitude instead of fear. This is how you know a marriage is from Allah. It does not pull you away from Him slowly. It brings you back to Him gently, until faith feels like home again. In the right marriage, sacrifice does not feel like something taken from you. It feels like something invested. You do not give endlessly while feeling unseen or unappreciated. Even when you compromise, there is a sense that what you are giving is building something meaningful, not disappearing into emotional emptiness. A marriage written by Allah does not demand sacrifice through fear or pressure. You are not sacrificing to keep peace, avoid abandonment, or prove your worth. You sacrifice because you understand the value of what you are protecting. That difference changes everything inside the heart. When sacrifice is purposeful, it does not exhaust your soul, it strengthens it. You may feel tired at times, but you do not feel used. Your efforts are acknowledged, respected, and reciprocated in different ways, even when not immediately visible. In the right marriage, both partners understand that sacrifice must be mutual, even if it is not always equal at the same moment. There is no scorekeeping, but there is fairness. You trust that what you give today will not be taken for granted tomorrow. Sacrifice feels heavy when it is demanded. It feels light when it is chosen. In a marriage with Barakah, you choose to give because the environment is safe enough to give freely. Your generosity is not exploited. It is honored. You are not constantly emptying yourself to fill emotional gaps. Instead, sacrifice becomes an act of care rather than self-erasure. You remain whole even while giving because your identity is not lost in the process. In the right marriage, sacrifice does not silence your needs. You can still express discomfort, fatigue, or limits without being accused of selfishness. That freedom allows sacrifice to remain sincere rather than forced. When you sacrifice for someone who values Allah, your effort is connected to worship. You begin to see patience, restraint, and compromise as acts Allah sees, not just your spouse. That awareness gives your efforts spiritual weight. The right marriage teaches you that sacrifice is not about suffering quietly. It is about choosing growth over ego. You learn when to step back and when to step forward, guided by wisdom rather than emotion. You do not feel anxious that your sacrifices will go unnoticed. There is trust that Allah sees everything, and that your spouse also carries awareness. That trust removes bitterness before it can take root. In unhealthy relationships, sacrifice often leads to resentment. In the right marriage, sacrifice leads to closeness. It deepens understanding instead of creating distance. You feel more connected, not depleted. Sacrifice in a healthy marriage is balanced by gratitude. Even small efforts are valued. Appreciation does not disappear with time. That appreciation renews your willingness to continue giving. The right marriage does not require you to abandon yourself to maintain harmony. You do not lose your voice or your values. Sacrifice never comes at the cost of dignity. That preservation of self is essential for long-term peace. When sacrifice is purposeful, it does not feel permanent. You understand that seasons change. Sometimes you give more, sometimes you receive more. This flexibility keeps the relationship alive and fair. A marriage from Allah helps you distinguish between sacrifice and self-neglect. You learn that giving should not destroy you. This awareness protects both your emotional and spiritual health. You begin to feel proud of the sacrifices you make, not ashamed or resentful. They align with who you want to be. They reflect your values, not your fear. The right marriage also teaches you when not to sacrifice. You learn that some things should not be compromised. This clarity prevents regret and preserves respect on both sides. Sacrifice becomes a shared language of love, rather than a hidden burden. You feel supported, even when you are giving more. That support keeps your heart open. Over time, you realize that sacrifice in the right marriage does not take away your peace. It deepens it. You feel closer to Allah because your giving is intentional and clean. You stop associating love with exhaustion. Love begins to feel sustainable. You are not constantly recovering from giving too much to the wrong place. This is how you know the marriage is from Allah. Sacrifice does not feel like loss. It feels like worship because it is rooted in purpose, balance, and trust. The right marriage does not leave you emotionally reactive or spiritually rough around the edges. Instead, it slowly refines you. You begin to notice that your responses change before you even consciously try. Patience replaces impulse and thoughtfulness begins to guide your words. This transformation is quiet, but it is real. In a marriage written by Allah, character growth does not come from fear of conflict. It comes from respect. You want to speak better because dignity is preserved on both sides. You choose restraint not because you are silenced, but because wisdom feels more natural than reaction. Over time, you become more aware of your tone. You realize that how you say something matters as much as what you say. The right marriage teaches this without lectures. It teaches it through consistency, calm responses, and mature handling of disagreement. Your anger begins to soften, not because you stop feeling it, but because you learn how to manage it. You see that anger does not need to dominate every disagreement. You learn that stepping back can be more powerful than pushing forward. The right marriage improves how you listen. You stop listening only to reply. You start listening to understand. This shift alone changes the quality of every conversation. Feeling heard reduces the need to raise your voice or defend yourself aggressively. You also become more accountable. When you make mistakes, you are not met with humiliation or silence. You are met with honesty. That environment makes it easier to admit fault, and admitting fault is a sign of strong character. In a healthy marriage, pride slowly loses its grip. You learn that being right is less important than being righteous. This lesson does not feel like loss. It feels like relief. Ego no longer carries the weight it once did. The right marriage reshapes how you handle conflict. Arguments stop being battles to win. They become issues to resolve. This change protects the heart from long-term resentment and teaches maturity in disagreement. Your compassion grows as well. Being treated with fairness makes you more fair. Being shown mercy makes you more merciful. Character improves when kindness is modeled consistently. You notice that sarcasm, defensiveness, and harshness begin to fade. Not because you are suppressing yourself, but because they are no longer needed. Safety removes the need for emotional armor. The right marriage also improves your patience outside the relationship. How you treat family, co-workers, and strangers changes. Good character cultivated at home does not stay contained. It extends outward naturally. You become more mindful of your words during stress. Even when emotions rise, there is an internal pause. That pause is the space where character lives. The right marriage helps build that space. Your sense of responsibility deepens. You begin to think before acting because your actions affect someone you care about deeply. This awareness sharpens maturity without making life heavy. The right marriage does not excuse your flaws by calling them personality. It challenges you to refine them. At the same time, it does not shame you for having flaws. This balance allows growth without resentment. You begin to value self-control more than self-expression. You learn that not every feeling needs to be voiced immediately. This discipline protects relationships and preserves dignity. Over time, you stop repeating the same mistakes. Not because you are perfect, but because reflection becomes part of your process. The right marriage encourages reflection rather than repetition. You also become more forgiving, not because you tolerate harm, but because you understand human imperfection better. Forgiveness becomes a conscious choice, not a weakness. The right marriage strengthens humility. You stop assuming the worst. You become more open to feedback. This openness is a sign of a heart that feels safe enough to grow. You begin to respect yourself more. Improved character increases self-respect. You feel aligned with your values instead of constantly apologizing for your behavior. Slowly you realize that you are becoming someone you admire more. Your faith feels reflected in your conduct. That alignment brings inner peace. This is how you know the marriage is from Allah. Over time, it does not just give you companionship, it gives you refinement. Your character improves, and that improvement is a form of worship. The right marriage does not make you feel guilty for having boundaries. Your limits are not questioned, mocked, or treated as obstacles. Instead, they are understood as necessary protections for emotional, spiritual, and personal well-being. You do not feel pressured to explain yourself repeatedly just to be respected. In a marriage written by Allah, boundaries are not seen as rejection. They are seen as wisdom. When you say no, it does not create distance or punishment. It creates trust. Your spouse understands that love does not require access to every part of you at every moment. You are not forced to overextend yourself to maintain harmony. You do not sacrifice rest, dignity, or values just to avoid conflict. The right marriage allows you to exist as a whole person, not someone constantly adjusting themselves to keep peace. Respecting boundaries creates emotional safety. You know that your feelings, space, and needs will not be violated. That safety allows you to open up naturally rather than defensively. Intimacy grows because it is not demanded. In the right marriage, boundaries are mutual. You are equally mindful of your spouse's limits. This mutual respect creates balance. Neither person feels controlled, and neither feels ignored. The relationship breathes easily because space is allowed. A marriage with Barakah does not use love as leverage. Boundaries are not met with silent treatment, emotional withdrawal, or resentment. When limits are respected without punishment, trust deepens rather than erodes. The right marriage understands that boundaries protect love from burnout. Constant access and emotional pressure eventually exhaust the heart. Respecting space allows affection to remain sincere instead of forced. You do not feel the need to defend your values repeatedly. Your spouse does not test how firm your boundaries are. They do not push to see what they can get away with. They honor your standards from the beginning. In such a marriage, boundaries do not create distance, they create clarity. Each person knows where they stand. This clarity prevents misunderstanding and resentment from building silently. The right marriage does not confuse closeness with entitlement. Emotional intimacy does not become a license to overstep. Love remains respectful, even in moments of vulnerability. You are allowed to change boundaries as you grow. The right marriage adapts without accusation. Growth is supported, not resisted. This flexibility allows the relationship to evolve without strain. When boundaries are respected, communication improves. You can express discomfort without fear. You are not afraid that honesty will damage the relationship. That freedom strengthens connection. A marriage from Allah understands that some boundaries are non-negotiable. Faith, dignity, and self-respect are not sacrificed for emotional convenience. This understanding preserves long-term stability. The right marriage does not make you feel selfish for needing space. It recognizes that rest and reflection are part of emotional health. Space is not abandonment, it is renewal. Boundaries also protect from emotional manipulation. In a healthy marriage, love is not used to override conscience or values. Consent is respected at every level, emotional and spiritual. You do not feel pressured to be constantly available. Your time is valued. Your energy is respected. This consideration prevents exhaustion and resentment. When conflict arises, boundaries guide resolution. Discussions do not turn into attacks. Limits prevent harm during disagreement. This discipline preserves respect, even under stress. The right marriage teaches that boundaries are an act of care, not separation. They keep the relationship clean. They prevent regret. They protect hearts from damage that cannot be undone. Over time, you realize that respecting boundaries actually deepens trust. You feel safer being vulnerable because you know your limits will be honored. This respect extends beyond the marriage. You become more confident setting boundaries elsewhere. Healthy love teaches healthy self-respect. This is how you know the marriage is from Allah. Boundaries are not fought, they are honored. And that honor creates peace that feels closer to worship than struggle. The right marriage does not make you lose yourself. It brings you back to who you were meant to be. It does not exhaust your heart or confuse your faith. It steadies you, refines you, and pulls you closer to Allah without force. If love feels heavy, chaotic, or constantly demanding, do not rush to normalize it. Allah does not write stress as a sign of Barakah. What comes from Him brings Sakinah, even when life is not easy. Even when trials appear, peace remains beneath the surface. Trust Allah's timing. Trust His wisdom. The marriage written for you will not steal your iman to survive. It will strengthen your iman to last. And when it arrives, you will not need to convince yourself it is right. Your heart will recognize the calm. Until then, protect your faith. Protect your peace. Because what Allah has written will reach you without breaking you.